Today, we're gonna be doing a no-nonsense, simple, beginner 90s anime eyes tutorial. This is gonna be very bare bones how to draw 90s anime eyes. We're not gonna be coloring them. We don't need any fancy supplies. All we're gonna need is paper and a pencil, preferably a sharp pencil. To draw both eyes, we're gonna wanna draw a guide. So I want my eyes to be pretty even in size and in symmetry. So I'm going to draw a guide. First I'm going to draw a line up. Just do it in small, continuous light strokes. And then we're going to do a line in the middle. So we're kind of going to make a cross shape. And try to get it as straight as you can. And you can see the way I'm holding my pencil. It really helps to get the line semi-straight. And no drawing is ever going to be 100% perfect, but we want to get pretty accurate. That's the goal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to draw the tops of the eyes. So we're going to do the top lash line. Now, when you're drawing anime eyes, usually it's pretty simple. You just want to do a line on the top and a line on the bottom. Not a straight line, unless that's your style, but there's lots of styles and ways to do your lines to make different anime expressions. But I'm just going to do a really simple curved line, and you kind of want to very lightly build it up because we're trying to get a nice lash line shape. You don't want the inner lash line to go as far down as the outer lash line. This is the outer edge of the eye and this is the inner edge of the eye. You want the inner edge of the eye to be higher up than the outer edge of the eye for this style of eye. So I'm just gonna kind of shade in that shape that I made with my faint lines. And you want the edges of both of the lash lines to be fairly sharp. I mean, it's really up to you how you do it, but that's how I do mine. Okay, so now I'm gonna try to replicate it on the other side, because if I just do the entire eye, trying to recreate it on the other side, the whole thing, is going to be a little overwhelming to try to get it to look the same on both sides. So I'm just going to try to replicate this one shape that I did on the side. So we can see that this inner lash line is higher up over here. So we're going to try and keep the same level, okay? So this would be if the anime character was facing front, like looking straight at you. It would look different if the anime character's head was turned to the side, but we're doing facing front eyes today. And I'm also trying to keep the outer lash line at the same level as on the other side. Just try to copy the shape as much as possible. And it's okay to correct any mistakes you make along the way. Sometimes you want to just take a good look at your shapes and see, did I make any mistakes? And then you can kind of erase around the edges to make the edges more clean and shaped the way you want. So you're pretty much sculpting with both ends of the pencil, with your pencil tip and with your eraser. You're using that to sculpt each line. Because I noticed I was making my line too inwards. You don't want it to be coming too into the eye, because this whole area is where the eyeball is going to be, and you don't want this to curve in there. So you want to keep that straight down. If I draw a very, very faint line this way, I can kind of see if they're level with each other. So they're not exactly level with each other. If you want, you can use a ruler to make it even more precise, but I can probably bring this one down a little bit. And I'm just going to continue to darken the shape. And generally you want to keep the middle section of the lash line a bit thicker than the outer edges of the lash line. The outer edges are usually thinner, and then the middle section is usually a bit thicker. So just take your time filling in the shape and refining it. There is no rush. This is not a race. So I'm going to draw another faint line here to see if it's level with the other side. And as you can see, this side is going much lower than this side, so I'm going to bring this down a bit. And I'm going to continue to refine and darken the shape on this side. Now I'm going to do the iris of the eye so that I can decide how far down I want my bottom lash line to be. You want to make the eye shape, the iris shape, an oval. Okay, we're not doing a circle, we're doing an oval because that's the 90s shoujo anime style eye. That's how it usually is. So we're gonna lightly try our best to build up a shape like an oval. And we don't want the oval to be too skinny. We want it to be a little bit chunky. So we want some big round eyes. And don't worry if it looks too messy. You can always clean things up later. Right now you're just laying down the general shapes and the placement of where things are going to go. So now I'm going to try to do the same on the other side. And I'm going to make a line here to just make sure that it's at around the same level, because making a symmetrical drawing is very tricky. Even for more experienced artists, it can still be a little tricky. And I'm just gonna try and refine and perfect the oval shape. So the more you build up your lines, the more you want to add a little more pressure at a time, because then you'll start to define your shape a lot better, and you'll know I need to clean up the fainter lines. And you know, fainter lines are easier to erase than the darker lines. And it's good to build up the darkness of the line rather than putting a lot of pressure on the paper. And then if you do mess up, you won't be able to erase it. So that's very important. Now that I have my iris laid down, I can decide where to put the bottom lash line. And it's okay if while you're doing this at any time you need to look at a reference of anime eyes. It's not cheating to use a reference. Just keep that in mind. References are how you learn. So I just want to leave a small gap. I don't want to leave too large of a gap, because if you add too large of a gap, then the eyes start to look a bit insane. And I made it go up a little bit too much here, so I'm going to erase that. The line at the bottom is usually thinner than the line at the top, like significantly thinner. So you want to keep that fairly thin. And it's kind of like a gentle curve. It's like almost straight, but like slightly curved towards the other lash line at the top, so that it, you know, kind of makes its own shape. It's almost like it wants to create an oval, but it doesn't quite create the oval. And it usually stays open here. Anime artists, they usually do not put a line connecting the top and bottom lash line. How they differentiate between the eyeball and the skin is through color, but we're not coloring today, so we don't need to worry about all that. So now I'm gonna just replicate it on the other side, and making my guideline a little bit higher so that I can match this side. And we can erase all these guidelines later, so it doesn't really matter if it looks a little funny, because we'll just erase it. So remember, you want it to be mostly straight but slightly curved. So I feel like we need to make it go a little higher, because like I said, we don't want this gap here to be too big. That makes the eyes look a bit mad. And when I say mad, I mean crazy, not like mad angry. Okay, now I'm gonna erase the bottom and carve out the line to be a bit thinner and straighter. I can carve it out a bit at the top too, and at the bottom. It helps to have a good, thick, clean eraser when you're doing this. That really saves you some headaches. Okay, and I'm gonna erase this guideline over here too, because we don't really need that anymore. And now I'm just gonna darken this one up a bit so it matches the other side. So remember, we're not aiming for perfection here, we're aiming for progress. So we have most of the eye laid down. Now we're going to start adding the details. What I'm gonna add first is I'm going to add the upper eyelid fold. The upper eyelid fold usually it starts around slightly past the middle of the iris. So like the middle of the iris is here. Like I can even draw a line to show you. As long as the lines are faint, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're doing it in pencil and you have an eraser. So you want to go slightly past the middle and then draw it curving down the eye. And it doesn't need to go all the way to the bottom. You want to leave about this much space. Just want to leave a little bit of space there. We're just doing a little accent line above the upper lash line. And this line should be very, very thin. And I messed up over here, so I'm just going to erase. And then I'm going to bring it more curved down right here. Okay? Okay, so like I said, it doesn't matter if it's perfect. Now we're just going to try and replicate it on the other side. So we can even mark our start and end points if you want to be a little precise about it. So this is going to be the end of our eyelid fold line, and this is going to be the beginning of our eyelid fold line. It's just a general guide so that you know when to stop and when to start. And you can go like a little bit past those dots too, if you feel like that would look better. It's just a general marker, just for your peace of mind. I think I'm gonna bring it a little more out here and a little more out here. So yeah, you want this line to be thin and like kind of sharp at the ends, because it's a fold. So yeah, just keep making corrections as you go to anything that looks off. Now I'm going to start working on the inside of the eye. In a normal human eye, you would just put a big dark spot here, and then you would do like a little bits of eye shinies. But no, in anime eyes, especially 90s shoujo anime eyes, you want to make the eye shiny the star of the show. So we're going to do a big oval here that's going to be the eye shiny, okay? And it's going to be towards the top, the upper section of the iris, and it's going to be in the middle. Not the middle of the iris, like not in the very center of the iris, but the middle upper section. We're going to make a big oval. And you know, it doesn't matter if your lines look sloppy. Some of us have shaky hands. That's okay, because you can always just clean things up later, and the shakiness adds texture, so don't even worry about it. Now we're going to duplicate that on the other side. This would be a lot easier if we were digitally drawing, because then we can just copy and paste the whole eye. I'm making another guideline here because I feel like I'm not sure where to stop that other eye shiny. So if this was digital drawing, we could just do one eye and then copy and paste it onto the other side, but we're doing traditional here, so we don't have that luxury. We gotta rely on skill alone. Okay, so yeah, that tells me where to generally put my big white eye shiny. This big white eye shiny. So I used to be pretty bad at drawing things symmetrical like this, but with this multiple guidelines hack, which like I said, you could even use a ruler, but I actually learned this little trick of doing all these different guidelines across, you know, the face of a character or across anything that you want to draw that's symmetrical. I learned this trick from, believe it or not, Disney. I was watching these Disney drawing tutorials, and that's the method they were using to do like a character's face straight on, symmetrical. Because if you're drawing a character that's like kind of facing to the side a little bit, you don't have to keep things symmetrical, so it's easier. That's where a lot of beginners they get kind of tripped up. I notice, like, for example, my daughter and my mother, I notice when they draw, they try to draw things straight on, like looking directly at you and symmetrical, and that's kind of like a recipe for disaster if you don't have the right techniques to make it symmetrical on both sides. Okay, so I have my little eye shinies down. I think I might have made this one too large, but we can just clean that up later. Okay, so now we are gonna do the dark part of the eye. We're gonna do the pupil. And the pupil, it just pokes out a little bit from underneath the giant eye shiny we placed down. So I'll show you. So you start from here, connect from the eye shiny, make a round shape, and then bring it back up to the eye shiny like that. And so that we differentiate between the eye shiny and the pupil, we color it in. Just gently shade it in with your pencil. You don't need to go too hard, just a little shading right like that. And we do the same on the other side. I can do guidelines so that it's around the same level. Just build up your line like that and shade it in. And I feel like that's a little long, so I'm gonna erase it. I'm gonna erase around the edges. Make sure it stays in that oval shape. And I know it looks like the darkness of the pupil is going all the way up here, but that's actually not supposed to be there. That's just supposed to be a thin outline of the eye shiny. Next, we're going to put down 2 more eye shinies. We're going to put down one over here and one over here. One's going to be medium size, and it's going to be a circle. And the next one is going to be small, and it's going to be an oval, and it's going to be over here towards the right. So first I'm going to place down the small one. Just do a small oval, just like so, and do the same on the other side. Small oval. Now we're going to place down the medium-sized circle eye shiny, and it's going to go right on the edge over here. And just duplicate it on the other side. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. Now we're starting to really see these eyes come together. So now we're going to do the lashes. So the lashes on a 90s anime shoujo eye are usually pretty thin. So let's start with the top lashes. I'm just going to do 4 lashes. They usually don't have too many lashes. So we want to start them not in the middle over here at the top of the eye, but like kind of towards the side. So let's do the first one. And you kind of want them to be slightly curved, but not too curved. I mean, like I said, that's a stylistic choice, but this is just how I'm doing it. Now we're doing the second one. That's not supposed to be there. I messed up. And if you erase a line that's supposed to be there, then just draw it back in. See how that line is curved? Okay, so now I'm gonna do another one. I think I want this one to be the longest actually, so I'm gonna bring it out more. And I'm gonna erase this one slightly. So I'm gonna do one slightly shorter, one slightly longer, then one slightly shorter again. And just erase to refine the tip if it gets a little too blunt, because remember, we want the lashes to be very thin and sharp, especially towards the ends. And now we're going to add one slightly shorter than that last one down here. And you don't have to do both eyes if that's intimidating to you. You could just do one if you want to go like super low pressure with it. I'm just doing both eyes because it's going to make a pretty thumbnail. Okay, so now I'm going to duplicate what I did on this side on this side. So we're doing one medium long, one extra long, remembering to curve up slightly, then one medium long again, and one slightly shorter. It's still pretty long. Clean up any mistakes. And there's still plenty of mistakes here for me to clean up, but like I said, I'm just laying down the foundation right now. I know you see a lot of people drawing things perfect on the first try, but that's not realistic for most people. Most people have to really work hard on each line and take their time to get it just how they want it. So just darkening up the lash line a little more. You'll notice that as you move your hand over the paper, you'll start to see that your graphite starts to smudge. So it's always good to go back in and refine your lines again. Now we're going to move on to the bottom lashes. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 outer lashes here and 2 inner lashes here. These are going to be smaller, and then these are going to be slightly longer, but they're all going to be pretty short. Just going to refine this line real quick. Now I still feel like I made this line too low, so I'm just going to bring it up a bit before I start drawing in the lashes. Okay, that looks better. So I'm going to start with one tiny one at the edge here and one slightly longer one. You want to make it slightly thicker towards the lash line and then taper it out. And then we're going to make one small one again. Okay, doesn't that look nice? Now we're going to do 2 small ones going out on the inner lash line here. And those should be smaller than these ones out here. Okay, so now we're going to just do that again on the other side. So we're doing one small one, one medium one, another small one, and then we're going to do 2 little ones towards the inner corner. There we go. And now if you wanted to add any more like expressiveness to this eye and get creative with it, you could add them like sparkles if you want to draw sparkles, but we're just going to keep it simple for this tutorial. But one thing I do want to try us adding is some eyebrows. So if you want these eyes to be more like expressive, you would draw in some thin anime or 90s anime eyebrows. So if you do them like this, I don't know if you can see that, but if you do them in this direction, pointing down towards the inner upper lash line, then it's going to look like angry or determined. If you put them up like this, it's going to look more happy and optimistic or excited. What I like to do when I do eyebrows on any of my characters is I like to go for both. I like to do one eyebrow down and one eyebrow up. That's just my personal preference. You can do them however you want. So you want to put a line like this for an angry eyebrow, and make an outer line here for the outer edge of the eyebrow. And I'm making mine kind of arched like this. And usually you want to make it slightly thicker towards the middle of the brow, like that. And then it gets thinner out here. Now I'm going to do a happier brow. So you can just copy how I do the brows. Whether you want to do happy or angry. And you want to keep it pretty round and thin, because that's how they made the eyebrows in the 90s animes. They made them round and thin. Okay, so now that we've pretty much laid down everything that we need to lay down, now we can go into line refinement and like perfection mode. So this is the part where you can just darken up any lines and erase any mistakes, erase the guidelines. And if you want, if you're brave, you could grab a pen and outline on top of your drawing. If you're not so brave, or you just don't have like a pen or a fine line or anything, then what you can do is just darken up the lines and clean up the lines with the eraser. And that'll kind of give like a more stark effect so you can see your drawing better and so that it looks like more perfected. So I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to just clean this all up, you know, like go around the edges of the lines and stuff with my eraser. And I'm going to darken up the lines, see if there's any mistakes. We don't need to be too perfectionist about it, but sometimes I have that bad habit of being too perfectionistic about the eyes. So, and I'm just going to use my traditional fine liners. Here's an example of a traditional fine liner. This is an Ohuhu fine liner. It's in black. And I'm going to use this to outline the eye. And I'm going to do that off camera because my hands are very shaky, and if I do this at a weird angle so that I can record it, I could really mess them up. But yeah, just go over your lines with either your pencil, darkening them up, or with a pen or a fine liner if you have one, but most beginners aren't going to have a fine liner. I'm just really fine lining them so you can really see my lines, and because the pencil, it kind of fades into the paper a little bit. So I'm just going to fine line mine so you can see it better. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so here are the finished eyes. Well, they're not completely finished yet. As you can see, I haven't erased the guidelines yet and all like the pencil markings. So if you are going to fine line your drawing, you want to make sure to erase all the leftover pencil markings, okay? So I'm just gonna start erasing. Here is the finished 90s anime eyes that I drew. I tried to get it as symmetric as possible and as neat as possible, but that's not always realistic, especially when you're doing it on paper traditionally. Yeah, some people, they have a really steady hand and they have years and years of practice, but not all of us are that experienced, but we do our best where we can. If you fine line yours and you make any little mistakes, you could always try and use whiteout. I don't have any, so I didn't do that. But yeah, if you have any colors, you could just color this in. You could even use Crayola colored pencils. That's what I like to use. I don't have any like fancy art supplies other than my fine liners. So yeah, we're just sticking to bare bones basics here, and I just wanted to show any beginners how they can draw some 90s anime shoujo eyes. Yeah, I like the way these turned out. They're not perfect, but we're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for good enough. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed drawing with me today, and I hope you're doing awesome. So I hope to see you again in the next video, and I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!